Wow, it looks like winter had one more surprise in store for us. We got a fair bit of snow. I think, unfortunately, it's too little too late. I think still pretty wet under all this. I know the snowmobile clubs have taken most of the signs down up where I am, so thinking the season's pretty much over. So it looks like I'm probably going to be putting the snowmobile away for the season, but that's okay because a lot of the information in this video is going to be useful whether you're into ATVing or other outdoor sports as well. In today's video, I want to have a look at this Montana 610 handheld GPS from Garmin, but I also want to have a general discussion about GPS as it relates to snowmobiling. Is a GPS a must-have for a snowmobiler? And if so, is the GPS on your smartphone good enough? So the guys at Track Maps were good enough to send me this unit because it helps me take advantage of some of the more advanced features like saving and sharing routes that Track Maps offers that I couldn't do on my Garmin Nuvi. So even though they shared this with me, I still want to have an objective discussion as opposed to just flogging a product, because I think really a GPS isn't for everybody. Not every snowmobiler needs to have a GPS. Whenever I do a product related video on the channel, I try and be objective and have a discussion and discuss pros and cons and let you guys make up your own mind. Now, if you're talking about GPS technology, both the smartphone and a dedicated GPS unit have pros and cons, and we're going to look at those in 2 seconds, so stick around. Alright guys, so I try and come up with a wide variety of topics to appeal to snowmobilers with all levels of experience, including product discussions like this one. So particularly if you're new to snowmobiling and you're looking for tips or tricks, make sure you take a second, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell icon, then you'll get notified when I post a new video. First thing I'll say is that unless you only ride on your own property or kind of around the neighborhood, I think a GPS is a really good idea for a snowmobiler, if not a must-have, particularly if you're riding long distances on trails or if you're out in the backcountry. Now, I know the area that I ride, if you watch in the background of any of my videos, it's a lot of dense cedar, and especially in the winter when it gets a snow cover over it, everything looks the same. Now, GPS can be a simple matter of convenience, that you can plan your routes, that you can make sure you don't run out of gas and things like that. But it can also be a real safety issue, right? Because you get lost out in the elements, the results are kind of obvious. Now, the reason I put a GPS on the sled in the first place was I was riding on a friend's place a couple of years back. It's private property, but he has a couple of 100 acres. Lots of trails cut in the bush. On the way out into the bush, I actually went by a trail that I didn't realize was there, and I inadvertently turned onto it when I was coming back. You know, if you know where you're going, you're fine, but if you get lost back here, everything looks the same. Some of it's groomed, some of it's not. Pretty easy to get turned around. So I really got myself turned around. Wasn't really in any trouble. I did kind of stop and realize I was going the wrong way and found my way out, but it was a little disconcerting, and I just realized that I would enjoy my riding a lot more if I did know exactly where I was. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a brand new snowmobile, you may actually have had a GPS as an option, but if not, buying a unit like this Montana 610 can be pretty pricey. This one's about $500. Now, since most of us have smartphones that have GPS on them, is it actually worth it? Now, for all my in-car navigation, I usually use my iPhone, and that's one of the reasons the Garmin Nuvi that I installed on the sled has been sitting in a drawer. So I use an app called Waze for all my in-car navigation, and then there's a lot of other really good GPS apps like Motion X that will offer you point-to-point navigation for hikers. Now, your smartphone actually has some advantages over a dedicated GPS unit. So obviously you have connectivity, right? So you can download updated information. I know some of the apps let you download small chunks of maps just for your area. You can get social information. So Waze, the one GPS app I use, actually lets other users post if there's traffic jams and traffic slowdowns and things like that. Typically the processes are a lot faster. Screen to price ratio. So you can get some GPSs with a nice big screen like this Montana, but they're a lot more expensive. And the less expensive units have really small screens that aren't as good as the one on your smartphone. Now, in terms of cons for a smartphone, obviously connectivity is an issue. If you don't have the entire map with you, that can be a problem. So if you're using Google Maps, stick your phone in airplane mode and try it, and you'll see what I mean. You're just going to get an empty grid. So if you don't have connectivity, now, a lot of the areas I ride I don't have a good signal. So heavily wooded areas, really overcast weather, all the kinds of things that we use a snowmobile in, you don't have a signal. So that's one problem. The other con is they're really easy to damage. And I'm sure most of you watching this have dropped your phone at one time or another. I have a couple in the house that have cracked screens. They're just not designed to be outside in the cold and in the weather. And the other downside, obviously, if you do have connectivity with your smartphone is, depending on your plan, is you may have to pay for data download, whereas you don't have to worry about that with a dedicated GPS unit. So the GPS, now, typically, especially some of the more expensive units, will have a more sensitive receiver, so you're going to get a faster and a more accurate fix. But nowadays, the newer smartphones are even getting better at that. But there's a couple of really basic reasons. So one is that it's right in front of me. It's always on. I can always see it. It's designed to be outside. The other advantage with a dedicated GPS is mapping. I'm always going to have the mapping on board regardless of connectivity. So Track Maps, for example, is on a micro SD card. I'm going to plug it into the back of my Garmin unit, and then it's here. So even if I'm not connected to my cellular network, I can still access my map. And obviously, there's no fees for usage with a dedicated unit. The other thing I like about the GPS units versus the cell phone is it's a better desktop experience. So what I mean is by plugging the GPS unit into my computer and using it to plan, save, and share routes. That's another advantage of a GPS when you're talking about a sport like snowmobiling. Now, I think for a snowmobiler, a dedicated GPS is a better choice for the simple reason that it's always on. It's right in front of me where I can see it easy. The other thing is then I can keep my cell phone, warm and dry, and most importantly, charged in my pocket where it's not going to get damaged, where it's there if I really need it out on the trail. All right, now that being said, is it worth spending $400 or $500 on a unit like that Garmin Montana versus something cheaper like this Garmin Nuvi? Well, let's have a look at it. Okay, the first thing to keep in mind, the Montana is made to be outdoors. This Garmin Nuvi is not, so you're going to need to buy some kind of a weather cover. If you do that, make sure you invest in a decent one. This is an inexpensive one I bought from eBay, and you'll see the plastic is cracked in a couple of places, and I've only used this for one season. Okay, the other issue was the mount that I used, so I went with this suction cup mount. There's a couple of different types. If you're wondering about this mount actually worked fine for me. It's been on there since last winter, actually, and it hasn't come off, so it actually worked really well. All right, guys, so it wasn't a perfect solution, but you know what? If you're on a limited budget, this worked fine for me all winter. All right, the suction cup mount worked great, so I went ahead and I got another one for this Montana. There's handlebar mounts and things like that. I found them really hard, especially because I've got the pad in the middle here. There's not a lot of room for that, and I really liked having it right in front of me. So got another suction cup mount. This one has an integrated speaker. I don't know how useful that is when you're wearing a helmet. Probably not. Now, the Montana, one of the things, and I'll talk about this when we unbox it, but it's supposed to have like a 16-hour battery life, so I may not need to plug it in as well, but this mount does come with a charge cable as well. All right, so let's have a look inside the box. So we've got our service manual and a charger, and we've got a series of international attachments. The other thing in the box is the lithium-ion battery. One of the things with this type of battery is it tends to work really well in the cold, which is obviously a good thing for snowmobilers. What it says on here is that you can get up to 16 hours from the battery. The other thing that's kind of a cool option with this is you can put AA batteries in it, 3 AA batteries, and you can get 20 hours out of it with those. Okay. And on the other side of the box, we have the unit itself. Okay, so in terms of display, it's got a nice 4-inch display, so that's measured from corner to corner. So in terms of smartphones, that's not a huge display anymore, but in terms of GPS, that's a pretty big one. The other thing that's nice with this screen is it's what's called a transflective display. So it's the material that's backing it, makes it much easier to see in daylight. Okay, the other thing that's nice with this unit, and actually a lot of the handheld units, is it's rated IPX7, and that's basically talking about how weatherproof it is. So IPX7 means that it can be submerged 1 meter in water for up to 30 minutes. So I'm probably never going to do that, but it does tell me that it's probably going to be good out in the rain and the wet snow. Okay, so to put preloaded maps in this, the card slot is under the battery compartment. So before we install the battery, we're going to install track maps. Here's one of the differences with the Garmin Nuvi. Mapping goes in on a SD card slot on the side. It's not covered. It's completely exposed to the elements. It's one of the things that makes this less than ideal for a snowmobiler. I've talked about track maps in the past, by the way, if you haven't watched the channel before. This is all of the Ontario trail maps, right? So there's like 32,000 kilometers of trails on here. 20,000 points of interest, 30 snowmobile tours, pre-planned tours around Ontario. So pretty cool. I know Track Maps makes snowmobile maps for a lot of the other provinces. I don't think they have the US yet, but they're working on it. So I'll put the link to their website in the description for this video so you can go and check out what's available in your area. They also make mapping for ATVs and marine use. So yeah, it's pretty handy. Okay, so we're going to take the micro SD card out of the SD card holder and take the battery compartment cover off. So and again, you can see here you can use AA batteries. I thought that was kind of a cool feature. And that's installed. Now we're going to install the battery and replace the rear door. All right, so this display is much easier to see than the one on the Garmin Nuvi. It's really good in daylight. But the other feature that's really nice about the touchscreen on this one is it works with gloves on, which is a really nice feature for a snowmobiler. Now, fortunately, we do have a really bright sunny day, so other than a little bit of reflection on the glass there, you can see that even in direct sunlight, you can see this screen pretty well. Now, another cool feature about this unit is it's got Wi-Fi. So if you're within 10 feet of another Garmin unit that's got Wi-Fi, you can actually share your routes and waypoints. All right, guys, so what's the final verdict? Well, it's just my opinion, but I would say yes. If you're going off your property and you're going any distance on a trail or back into the backcountry, then a GPS is a really good idea for a snowmobiler to have. Now, if you have the money to spend, then I would say that there are some benefits to buying a good unit like this Montana. Obviously it's weatherproof. It's designed to be out in the elements. You have a nice wide display that you're going to be able to see well in the sunlight in bright conditions that snowmobilers are often out in. And you've got a touch screen that you're going to be able to use with gloves on. All good features for a snowmobiler to have. If you're on a bit of a tighter budget, then a setup like the previous one I was using with this Garmin Nuvi is going to do just fine. So it's a lot less expensive. Obviously, this unit's not going to last as well out in the weather. It's not designed for that purpose. You're going to have to get some kind of a cover. But I used this the end of last season, right through this season, and it worked just fine. And I was able to use track maps with it. My choice for my smartphone is to keep it zipped up in my jacket where it's there if I need it. All right, guys, so that's it for this video in my GPS series. A huge thanks to my friends at Track Maps for, both for answering my questions about GPS and for providing the Garmin Montana. Until next time, I'm David Clark. Thanks for taking the time to watch.